Well, hello, good afternoon. Oops, I've forgotten to put my microphone on. That's not a good start. Good afternoon. Right, is that better? Thank you so much for joining me. I can't believe it's Friday again. We've survived the week and it's time for some stamping and some chatting. I'm just adjusting. I've got a fan on the floor here, which I hope is not going to be noisy for you. And yes, I'm just trying to get myself situated here, as they say across the pond. Okay, let me have a look at my iPad and see if I'm there, which I am. Hooray. Okay. So if you are there, please tell me that you're there so I can say a proper hello to you. So I've got all kinds of cards for you today, cards for summer. So no particular suite, no particular bundle of stamps and dies or punch. I just thought it would be nice to just create some cards with a summery feel to them to hopefully inspire you and to encourage you to have a good look at your stash and see what things will combine well together to make some summery feeling projects. Okay, still looks like I might be on my own, but then again I might not be on my own because you can never tell with Facebook. Sometimes Facebook tells me and sometimes Facebook doesn't tell me who's there. So I just have to wait and see. If you comment, it will definitely come up, but it won't necessarily tell me who is actually watching. Okay, so what about this weather then? It has been so hot, so hot. I love warm sunny weather. I like to sit out in the sun. I'm not one of those people that wants to sit in the shade all the time, but once you get past about 24 degrees, it's too hot for me really. Certainly in this country where you've always got a certain level of humidity, and I think it's the humidity that's the real killer for me. I've been lucky enough to travel to one or two desert regions, and where the air is very dry there, I find it much easier to tolerate a really high temperature, but when that humidity goes up, it's not so good. So I can see Maureen is watching. Hello Maureen, happy Friday to you. So yes, but today is much cooler, certainly here down on the south coast. I don't know what it's like with you. It was cooler and fresher this morning. There's quite a breeze blowing, and it's has been sunny with hazy sunshine really, but it's become more and more cloudy, and I'm just kind of looking across at the sky and I don't think I can see any blue. It's all white with cloud. It's still very bright, but definitely not the clear blue skies that we have had earlier in the week. And Mary is here. Hello Mary, nice to see you. So yes, and I've had 4 weather warnings come in on my phone today. I've been watching the forecast for the next few days, all week really, to see what it's going to be doing. And it's changed around quite a lot as to what kind of weather we're going to get and when, and it's veered into very, very thunderstormy and not so thunderstormy, and rain on this day and rain now on that day and not on the first day. It's changed and changed and changed, which is just the way the weather is in this country where we're an island in the Atlantic. But 4 weather warnings, my goodness, I think we're supposed to get a lot of rain in the next couple of days, so batten down the hatches and see what gets thrown at us. So Maureen's saying hello, Belinda's saying hello, and hello to everyone. Yeah, she's just been out for a much cooler dog walk. Yes, I should think Tansy is much more comfortable, thank goodness for that. And Mary's saying hello to everybody too. I've just been wittering along about the weather really, because what would we have to talk about in this country if we couldn't talk about the weather? It's so changeable, isn't it? But it's much more comfortable now. I'd like to know what you've got planned for the weekend, and I'd like to know what you've been doing this week, so do tell me. I have got of course something planned for Sunday when the weather's supposed to be truly dreadful. We've got friends coming over for the day. Richard is going out to a car show with my husband. My husband's working at it, and Helen and I were going to sit in the garden with the Pims and wait for the boys to come back for a late lunch, but I think maybe we'll be having our Pims inside at this rate. We'll see, not quite sure yet, but it would be lovely to see them anyway. Just seeing if there's any other comments that I've missed. I don't think there's anything I've missed or missed acknowledging. So summer cards today. I don't know if you're crafting along with me. Let me know if you're going to craft along with me. And I should probably say that I've got all my craft room windows open. It is too hot to shut everything up, which is what I normally do when I film. Because although I live in a little tiny hamlet in the New Forest, we have got quite a busy main road just at the bottom of our garden, really. It was very quiet when we moved here, but then they banned lorries from going through Lyndhurst, which is a local small town with a very narrow main street. And the lorries caused a lot of pollution and an awful lot of traffic jams, so they stopped them going through Lyndhurst, and instead they've sent them down the bottom of our garden instead on this also minor road. It's only a B road, but all the lorry traffic that wants to go to Lymington from Southampton or that comes up from the west goes past our house. So unfortunately, what was a very quiet road when we moved in is now an incredibly noisy road. So that's a very long and rambling way of saying I apologise if you hear some traffic noise. I hope it won't be too bad. I've got my extra microphone on. But if there is, then I'm afraid we're going to have to work with it, because I think I will expire if I have to shut all the windows, because although it's nothing like as hot as it has been, it's still warm. Okay, so Mary had a call from the NHS. Oh no, and has to isolate until Monday, and you only go out once a week. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mary. How awful is that? I've heard so many people are getting pinged by the NHS at the moment. And there seems to be quite a lot of controversy about it, doesn't it? Whether you actually have been in contact with people, or whether it's just a super sensitive app. I don't know, but I'm very sorry about that. I hope you stay well. I'm pretty sure you're double jabbed now, so fingers crossed you will be fine. But I hope you didn't have anything out, away from your home planned for the next week, because that really is very frustrating. My husband, someone he works with, was supposed to be doing quite a lot of work tomorrow evening for a function, and she got pinged as well, so she's not allowed into work. So now my husband is having to work some extra hours tomorrow to do what she would have done. So it's nobody's fault, and it's important we all stay safe, but it's very frustrating indeed. Okay, Marjorie's here. Hello, Marjorie. Lovely to have you. All right, so tell me about your week. I hope most of you have had a better week than poor Mary has. Tell me what your weekend plans are. I'm going to catch you up with just a few bits of Stampin' Up news. Nothing huge and new imminently, but give it another week and it's going to get very exciting. So the designer series paper sale is ongoing until the 2nd of August. So if you've been thinking about stocking up on some beautiful patterned paper, don't leave it too late. You don't want to be buying on the 3rd of August when you could have got it at 15% off on the 2nd of August. All the papers in the annual catalogue, which are the standard papers, so not the specialty papers, but the standard packs, are in the sale with the exception of the colour families packs. So there's lots and lots to choose from, all with 15% off. I have sent out the new catalogues to everybody who has been a class attendee or a customer in the last 6 months. So I know some of those actually arrived the day after I sent them, even though I only posted them second class, so that was fabulous. Experience tells me that others will probably take 5 days to get there, but they have all gone out in the post, plus the extra ones that have so far been requested. So if you are watching this at any point and you don't have a Stampin' Up demonstrator who looks after you, but would like a catalogue, then let me know and I'll happily send one out to you. In with the catalogue were all sorts of extra bits and pieces, including a card kit, and I will be making that card up live here on Facebook at 2 o'clock on the 3rd of August, which is the day that the catalogue launches. It's also the day that Celebration 2 launches, so we've always had one big promotion between January and March, but this year we got 2 months for January and February, and then we've got 2 months for August and September, so that's very exciting. Every time you spend £45, you can choose a free item from the special brochure, and I put a Celebration brochure in with every catalogue that I sent out, so you will be getting those as well. So I'm going live on the week that the catalogue launches. I can't do an in-person live at the moment. I'm just a little bit wary of starting anything face-to-face right now because we've only just had restrictions lifted. So instead I will be doing it live online. So I will be here at 2 o'clock on Tuesday the 3rd, Wednesday the 4th, Thursday the 5th and Friday the 6th of August. So 4 days running at 2 o'clock. In with your catalogues there is a timetable of what I'm going to be doing, and I will also be setting up events on Facebook, so you'll be able to see what I'm doing when, as a reminder there as well. And on the first day I'll be making up the card with you. I'll also be talking about all sorts of other things, but I have put you written instructions in with your card, so if you'd rather make it up yourself at home at some other time, then you can do so. Gillian's here and she says hello to everyone and stay safe. Absolutely, Gillian. Mary says she was at Everton Garden Centre for lunch. They don't do timed visits, so it could have been any time during the day when someone was COVID was there, or they do not time visits, she says. So very frustrating, very frustrating. And equally, you could have been there and you could have been miles away from them, couldn't you? Because this app, I think, is so sensitive. I was hearing that it's even pinging people who live next door to somebody in a semi-detached or a terraced house, when one person in one house has is having to isolate or has got COVID, and because the person in the next door house is in such close proximity and the app is so sensitive, it's pinging them even though they've had absolutely no contact with the person, not been in the same place as them or anything. So it's very difficult to know, isn't it? Belinda's saying what a shame for Mary. She gathers that Camellia's is now closed for staff self-isolating. Wonders if it was the same occasion. Yeah, it might well have been, mightn't it? Maybe it was the staff. Who knows? It's a huge issue, isn't it? Although everything is opening up, I think we're all being super cautious. I know I'm still wearing my mask whenever I go out, and frenetically hand washing all the time, and getting through gallons of hand sanitizer. So yes, I think that's going to be a situation normal for a while, isn't it? All right, so I've talked to you about the paper sale, I've talked to you about the new catalogues and the launch. I am starting, fingers crossed, face-to-face classes in September. So again, I've sent out a class timetable with the new catalogue. I'm very excited about being able to craft face-to-face with you. I am now booking for the first couple of face-to-face classes in September, which will be the monthly card class. Bookings for that close on August the 6th. And for the Welcome Back class, which is Saturday, September the 4th, that's a Saturday morning, and that will be a class where the crafting is a kit. All you do is bring your own pair of scissors and everything else you need is in the kit, so there's no sharing of equipment or anything. There'll be coffee and cake, and I'm sure an awful lot of chatting as we finally can catch up with each other. So booking for that one closes on, I've got it written down on my table, August the 13th. I'll be sending my class list out to everybody who's on my class's mailing list. Some of those people will have got a paper copy with a catalogue, some won't. But if you're not on my class mailing list and you haven't been a customer in the last 6 months and therefore I'm not getting a catalogue sent out, but you are interested in my classes, then let me know and I can email you a copy. I will be keeping my card class by post going each month up until Christmas, just so I can gauge if there's any interest in keeping that going. So far, everyone who's been doing it is much more keen to come face to face, but we will see. We'll see what happens with that. I'm also taking bookings for the August Fancy Fold Cards class. Closing date for that is the 6th of August as well. And a reminder that the Simply Elegant Sweet Sampler can be ordered until the 30th of July. And after that, that's it. That's the end of bookings. I'm wondering if that should... Yes, it is the 30th. Yeah, Friday next week. So a week today. If you want a reminder of what's in that sweet sampler, type a comment. And then when I turn the camera down, I'll show you. But if nobody wants to see it, I'm not going to get it out again because I've shown it for a couple of weeks now. So now booking for... Simply Elegant Sweet Sampler by next Friday. Fancy Fold cards for August. September face-to-face monthly card class and September card class by post, all by August the 6th. And the Welcome Back class on a Saturday morning in September. August the 13th is the last day to book. Okay, I don't expect you to remember all that. I will be sending out reminders to everyone on my class mailing list, so don't worry too much. All right. I'm going to turn the camera down. I'm just going to, first I'm going to have a quick look at the comments. Yeah, Mary is saying that sounds about right, Belinda. It sounds like it was the same occasion at the garden centre. Yeah, what a shame. Okay, so I'm going to cover you over, turn the camera down, tweak a few settings, move my microphone, and we'll do some crafting. Okay, so let me just cover you over so the movement doesn't affect you adversely. Change the settings. Change the microphone. And then clip up these trailing leads. Because you don't want to be looking at trailing leads. Cheryl's here. Welcome, Cheryl. Lovely to have you. Okay, I'm nearly there. Oops. There we go. My clippy thing's got a mind of its own. Okay, I'm sure have to adjust things a little bit. I'll just let my iPad catch up so I can see what you can see. That doesn't look too bad, actually. Doesn't look too bad at all. It's not quite straight. Just see if I can adjust that a tiny bit. Oh, the wrong way. Do you know, I do that every single time, don't I? Let's try it the other way. See if that's better. Marjorie's here and she says hi to everyone. Stay safe and well. Thank you, Marjorie. Absolutely. All right, so there we go. Right, let me reach my first bucket with all my bits and pieces in it. Now I've prepared 3 cards to show you. I'm hoping we'll have time to do them all. Let's see how we go. So let me put the first one down here for you to see. There we go. So I've used a stamp set on this which I absolutely love, but I don't use probably as often as I should, which is Beautiful Moments. And I'll show you the box in just a sec. I'm still pulling my bits and pieces out and popping them on my desk, which is what all the rattling around is. Okay, I think we're just about there. Right. So the Beautiful Moments set looks like this. It's got these lovely line drawings of figures on it, which if you like colouring, you can really go to town on. If you're not wild about colouring, you don't have to do a great deal. Just to add a little bit of colour, you can just wash some watercolour over, or a little bit of the soft pastels or watercolour pencils, or you can stamp them and then with a blender pen or a water painter just paint over the top and the ink will run a little bit and smudge some colour. There's so much you can do to colour them. So my favourite image here is the lady in the lavender field, so that's the one I'm using. I'm also using the little lavender image and the 2 butterflies and the thinking of you, which is such a useful sentiment to stamp onto things. My card base is Gorgeous Grape and I have a layer of Misty Moonlight, and if I can find what I've done with it, here we go. I wrote out all the measurements for you as well, so if you want to make one with similar proportions, then it's there for you. And of course you can always rewind if you're not sure, or you want to make one afterwards, or you didn't get a chance to write the measurements down. So it's a fairly standard card, just cut down from A4. The only thing I've done that's slightly different is that my the layer that I've stamped on is just an 1/8 of an inch smaller than my Misty Moonlight card layer. So I haven't gone down my usual 1/4 of an inch, I've just gone down an 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so let me move that out of the way. So I've actually stamped on patterned paper, and this patterned paper is in the Designer Series paper sale. It's from the Beauty of the Earth pack, and on one side it's got these lovely leaves, and all the papers in the pack are completely stunning. So if you haven't had a look at those, have a look at them in the catalogue. But on the other side you've got this beautiful painted sky. I don't know if it's been done with watercolours or acrylics. I think watercolours, but it's just absolutely beautiful, completely stunning. So I thought, well, this is so pretty, I wanted to do something with it. So what I've done is taken a layer of the paper, I've inked the bottom, and then I've stamped on it and then coloured the imagery. So it's really quite straightforward. It's just perhaps a little bit more unusual because I've stamped on the patterned paper. Kay is here and says hello to everyone, and thank you, Kay. I'm glad you like the card. So let me show you how I did it. Got all my pieces cut in here. So I have my gorgeous grape card base, Misty Moonlight layer, and a piece of the patterned paper. Now, a little bit of very basic colour mixing here. This paper is obviously blue, and if you add yellow to blue, you get green. If you add red to blue, you get purple, and so on. So I knew that I should be safe putting green onto blue because I might get a bluish green, but it was still going to stay green. However, had I been putting ink on that was perhaps pink, I wouldn't have got pink, I'd have got something that was much more purple. And in fact, just to check what I was doing before I started, I used a little offcut and tried the ink. Now Mary is saying there's no sound. Does anybody else have an issue with sound? Let me type that in as well. My one finger typing. Okay. So I'm going to brush on some ink while I'm waiting to find if anybody else has got a problem with the sound. I really hope not. I thought we had solved that problem. So I have, I'll show you just in case there's a sound. Belinda's fine with the sound. Thank you very much, Belinda. That's a relief. I'm sorry, Mary. I don't know what's happened. Let me just type a message to Mary. Just very quickly. Okay, so I've just, it's no good me saying something to Mary. So I've just typed her. It's coming and going now. Okay, Marjorie's saying it's okay for her. Maureen's saying it's okay for her. Thank you so much, ladies, for giving me that feedback. I'm really sorry, Mary. I don't know what it is. Sometimes when the weather is a little bit thundery, I know that, you know, the internet can do funny things. If it doesn't sort itself out, then I would definitely suggest that you know, come out of Facebook, shut down Facebook, and then go back in, come back to the page, and sometimes that will just sort it out. Alright, so I've got my Granny Apple Green ink pad, I've got my blending brush that I use with greens. So I've just loaded the brush with plenty of ink, and then I have just a plain clear block here, which I just go round in a circle with my brush, and that just makes sure that the ink is evenly all across the bristles. And then I'm just going to apply ink to my paper. I turn the paper round and see if I prefer it any one way to the other, and I think I probably like it that way round with that as the sky. So I'm going to turn it sideways because that's easier for me, and I'm just going to work round in a circle for about a third of the paper. And to start with, it's still pretty blue, but as I apply more ink to it, it will become greener, and those darker blue areas will just be darker bluish green areas. Okay, Mary said, yeah, it must be her, that's what she did, and it's okay now. Fabulous, Mary, thank you. Long may that continue. I was a bit concerned after all the sound issues we have been having with Facebook, but I'm very glad that it's okay. There, so these areas here which had darker blue on them are now, you know, definitely green, a bluish green albeit, but definitely green. So you can, you know, make that green as intense as you like. I might just put a little bit more on at the bottom, and then I'm just going to kind of let it fade up so it's just a little bit less intense towards the middle of the paper. There we are. Alright, I'm going to wipe my block off, otherwise I'm bound to lean on it. I'm constantly finding I've got ink all up my arms where I lean on things. Alright, so that's the inking, and that's probably the most difficult part of this card, and as you can see it was not too difficult. So now I'm going to bring in my stamps. Now I knew I wanted to colour my images using stamping blends, so that means I need to use a water-based ink pad. Most of our classic ink pads work fine with the stamping blends. I always try them first. Occasionally you find one where it bleeds a little bit, but mostly they're fine. But I am using Memento for this, Memento Tuxedo Black. It's had a lot of love, this ink pad, but you can just about read the label still, because I wanted a black image to colour in. So this is quite a small ink pad, and it's got a felt pad to it which is firm, so I'm going to work with taking the ink pad to the stamp and pressing really quite hard. Okay, and so I'm now going to stamp my girl, and because I want to put my greeting up here, to balance it I'm going to put her slightly to the left of centre, and sort of have her where her feet would be, have those in the grass, but most of her in the sky. Now obviously you can see the blue all through that image, but if you have a look at this you can see that the stamping blends have actually covered that paper really well. So definitely test on an offcut, test the colours that you want to use, but the coverage is fantastic. So I'm going to do the rest of the stamping and then I'll do some colouring in. So I'm going to take the little lavender, I think it's lavender, I always think of it as lavender, I guess it could be wheat stamp, and I'm going to stamp some more in the foreground and then a little bit further in the background as well. And I haven't got any particular plan for this, I'm just covering some of that ground so that there are flowers dotted around. And then I want to put a little bit more in the background as well, so this time I'm going to stamp off once and then stamp, and it will just give the effect of distance. So just to help get a little bit of perspective into this. And my butterflies. These are really, really tiny stamps, but they're so pretty, and I love that we've got a sideways butterfly. In profile, I suppose, would be the correct term for that. And then finally the words. So I'm going to have to pull this towards me. I hope you can still see it, just so that I can get it on there straight. There we go. So that's all my stamping done. So now I can just have fun colouring in. So I've got my stamping blends here. I love blends for colouring, but you could try with Stampin' Right markers. I must admit I haven't tried with those. Checked really just to see what the coverage is like on them. Do they cover up the blue sufficiently? If you do use Stampin' Right markers, because they're a water-based ink, you need to stamp in a solvent-based ink. Otherwise, if I used Memento and then coloured in with water-based markers, my black ink would start to bleed and smudge, and you don't want that. So use a StazOn ink if you're going to colour with a wet medium, a water-based medium I should say. Alright, so I've got Daffodil Delight. This is dark Daffodil Delight for her hair. I'll make her a blonde. And so although I'm using a yellow pen on blue paper, it's not really turning green at all. It's much more as if this alcohol-based ink in the markers is sitting on top, which is great. I've got Ivory here for her skin. Her dress is dark polished pink, my favourite pink. In fact, I think I'm wearing dark polished pink today. Did you notice? Are any of you crafting along with me? Are you creating some summer cards for yourself? And you can really just kind of scribble colour with these stamping blends. You don't have to colour neatly in lines like that, all going in the same direction, because the alcohol ink blends really, really smoothly. And I'm just kind of doing almost like an uneven line at the bottom of where her dress would be, to try to give the impression that her dress is just kind of partly covered up by the grasses. There we go. And I will let that dry, and then I will probably come back and go over the top again, just because there's a little bit of the blue showing, and I don't mind if there's some blue showing, but just to try and hide that a little bit better. Belinda's crafting, but at a rather slower pace because it's still very warm in her little studio. I know it has been very hot in there for you, Belinda, hasn't it? I know I've only got done this week about a third of what I would normally do in a week, because it has just been too hot to even think, let alone move. So this is dark pale papaya. Now that's the weirdest colour I think I can think of, dark pale papaya. But anyway, that's what it is, which I've just coloured in my butterflies with. And I'm actually, despite the fact it's a Thinking of You card, I am actually just going to add a tiny little touch of Wink of Stella on top of that. I didn't want to make this too blingy because I don't know what the occasion is I'll be sending it for. If it's a very sober occasion, then a lot of bling is not really appropriate, but that's just a little something to lift it. And then I'm going to colour in what I'm calling lavender. So I have Highland Heather markers here, the light one and the dark one. I'm going to use the light one where my lavender's in the distance, so that's the ones where I stamped the outline off first before I stamped on my project, and then I'll use the darker one for the one where the outline is darker, which again just helps with a little bit of a sense of perspective. Lighter colours in the distance and stronger colours to the foreground. Okay, so now the dark one. And I'm just really putting little dabs. The lavender flowers are roughly little ovals. And so just a little dab of the bullet tip on the marker colours them in quite nicely. On one of my other cards I have actually done most of the colouring already, because I thought, having shown you me colouring once, that's probably enough to explain what I'm doing. But this actually colours quite quickly, this card, because most of it is either the sky, which is provided by the patterned paper, or the grass, which I just inked with my blending brush. Okay, so that's all the lavender. And now I'm just going to go over the stems with Granny Apple Green. I've got the light one here for the stems that are in the distance, and it just adds a little bit of extra colour rather than those stems just being black. And then I'm going to use the dark Granny Apple Green for the ones that are a little bit more to the foreground. So I'm just doing this very quickly. I'm not trying to be exact, and in fact, if I was trying to be very exact, it would probably be less neat and more wobbly, because I'd be concentrating so much on exactly following the line that I would lose kind of the looseness that gives it character. And these images are quite sketchy, so I think it's absolutely fine to be a little bit sketchy and everything else. Alright, that's all my colouring done, but I am just going to come back with the pink and go over her dress again. Just give it a second coat. And you'll notice that I'm not actually trying to blend colours on this at all. I'm just using them to give me some vivid colour. Quite often with these I use the light and the dark to create shadows and light, but I'm not trying to do that here. There we are. So that's everything done on the card. It's really quite quick to put together, so let me layer things up. And I didn't say, do rest on something when you're colouring with stamping blends. Can you see where that pink has come through, and there's bits of purple as well? So you don't want to be colouring with stamping blends markers on your best wooden dining room table, because you might be upset if it gets inky. So make sure you work on some scrap paper or an oilcloth or something like that. There we are. So very narrow borders around this, which is where the multi-purpose glue really comes into its own, because I can just slide the panel and get those borders straight. So that just sits on the front like that. And then for the inside, I'm just going to stamp the butterflies and the lavender stems just to give me something inside. I'm not going to stamp any words inside, because I will probably want to write something when I come to send the card. There we go. So Belinda's saying she's amazed at how well the colour covers up the colour of the paper under it. Yes, I was too, Belinda. I didn't know if it would be possible until I tried it, but it works really well. You obviously have to pick your paper, but I think we have lots of papers in the catalogue where you could stamp over the top of them and colour in the images, and it would work just fine. Lots of the papers seem to have these beautiful kind of watercolory backgrounds, which often lend themselves to being stamped on. So that's my card there. I decorated the envelope in the same way. I see I've got a green smudge on it, but that's all right, because that's where the stamp will go. So here we go. There's the one I did earlier, and there's the one I've just done for you. So I'm going to clean my stamps and move everything out of the way, and I'll leave you those to look at. Pull them down a bit, that's better. If you've got any questions, please type them in. Okay. I'm going to clear the decks a bit. There'll be lots of rattling as I pick up all these markers. so I thought for the next one it would be quite nice to do something that's a little bit more male themed. So I've pulled together 2 stamp sets, which I tend to think of as male themed sets, to make this one. So if you know the catalogue really well, you'll know that the stamp sets I have used are Sailing Home and Mountain Air. Mary's saying she received her catalogue parcel today. Lots in there that she likes, particularly the penguins. Yeah, I think the penguins are going to be super popular, Mary. And did you spot that one of the Celebration free items is paper, patterned paper, with the same penguins on it? So if you buy the penguin stamps and the penguin punch, I can't remember how much those are, you may need to add something to it, but you will be able to choose, as long as you spend £45, the penguin paper for free, which I think is fabulous. I like the way they've kind of worked things between the catalogues like that. Alright, so I've got my stamping mat at the ready because Mountain Air is a photopolymer set. In case you don't know this set, these stamps are double-sided, so one side of them is smooth and it will stamp a shadowy kind of effect, which is these grey images, and then the other images are the detailed drawing ones, but they're all on the same stamp. I'm just using the detail images here. Belinda says she hadn't thought of using the 2 sets together. I'm glad that's helpful, Belinda. When I'm looking to combine sets, I always look to see if I can find sets which are a similar style. Now, I don't think these were drawn by the same artist, but they are a sort of a realistic line drawing style. I wouldn't combine, you know, with this one, for instance, more cute or cartoony style stamps. I would always be looking to put realistic style stamps with this. Equally, if I had a set of cute animals, I wouldn't necessarily be looking to put really realistic trees or flowers with them. So I think if you balance your style that way, you can put all sorts of things together. Alright, so just to talk you through this, there's several layers on here. I've got a balmy blue layer here which I've stamped the clouds on. Then I've stamped and die cut the mountains. I've stamped and die cut the trees on a larger piece which then extends all the way down to the bottom, which I have inked with some blue ink, so it's green at the top and blue at the bottom. And then I've stamped and die cut and then actually used my scissors a little bit on as well the boat images. Belinda is helpfully pointing out to Mary that if she's got the double balloon punch, which is now retired, it works perfectly with the balloon in the penguin stamps. Thank you, Belinda, that's good to know. Alright, so let's make one of these cards. So I have done a little bit of die cutting first, but I will do the stamping to show you. And I've lost a boat somewhere along the line. Let's see if it's in the envelope. Yes, it is. All right, so the first thing to do is to stamp the trees and the mountains. So I'm using, I haven't shown you the sizes. I'll put the sizes up in a minute. I'll use Smoky Slate ink for the mountains, and these stamps are quite long. I've got them on an I block here, so it's easier to take the ink pad to the stamp like that. And I need my mat underneath because they are photopolymer stamps. And you really do want either a foam mat like this or a couple of old magazines or something just a little bit soft under your stamping. These stamps in particular definitely need something under them or you don't get clear images. And then I've die cut this with the mountain dies, which I can show you. My die cutting machine doesn't fit well under my camera, so I've done the die cutting already, but you can see that that die will just sit over the top and cut out that mountain range. And then here's one I prepared earlier, so there we go. So that's my mountains ready. Then I did exactly the same with the trees. So I took a piece of, this is soft succulent card, such a pretty green. And I took the tree image, which is even longer than the mountains, inked it all the way along. This is a really juicy ink pad, so sometimes it leaves little marks where I lift it up, so I'm just kind of feathering those out. That looks okay. And stamp this towards the top like that. There we go. And the die for the trees, it cuts around the tops of the trees, if I can line it up, something like that, but it doesn't cut down here, so it will cut the top edge but not the rest. Sandy's here. Hello Sandy, nice to have you this afternoon. What's the weather like in Lincolnshire? Okay, so when I cut that, I had a piece that looked like this. So before I start layering things together, I'm actually going to create something that's a little bit more like water here. It doesn't matter that you're late, Sandy, you can always go back and see the first card I made on the replay. It's the wonders of this. She says it's grey in Lincolnshire too, is it? Yeah. I think we've got some different weather coming, haven't we? So I've got balmy blue ink here, and I've got another ink blending brush. This is one that I just keep for my blue inks. I've got a clean clear block. So I'm just going to blend the ink on the bristles and just make sure I've got no blobs. And then, much as I did on the first card, I'm just going to work in a circle and apply the ink to this. Now I don't mind if this ends up a greeny blue because it's going to be the water. I could have stamped this on white card and then applied blue ink, and I'd have got a truer blue that way. But with the die cutting you always end up with just a little border, and I wanted that to be green rather than blue. Sandy's saying it's wonderfully cool. Yes, it is so much cooler today, isn't it? Thank heavens. Might get some sleep tonight, that would be nice. So I'm just going to keep inking this until it's reasonably blue where the water's going to be and is still green where the trees are. And I really love this stamp because you've got this kind of reflection here, which could be reflected in water, or it could be shadows on the ground, shadows on snow. It's a really versatile stamp. There we go, and I'm just going across that area which I'm thinking of as reflections just a little bit, but I think that's probably it with the inking. And once again, I'm just going to use a baby wipe to clean off my stamp block, and actually my fingers, which are covered in ink, just to make sure I don't lean on that and get ink everywhere. Alright, so now I've got the basic components to make up the card before I start adding the detail. So the way it's going to go together is the mountains are going to go on here, fairly near the top. My die cut piece, I'm going to match the bottom with the bottom of a balmy blue layer, like that. And then I can kind of adjust my mountains if I want them to show a little bit more. like that. But I am going to stamp some clouds on the mountains, so I'm using this cloud image from the Mountain Air set, and I'm actually using Versamark ink. I didn't want the clouds to be as blue as they would be if I'd used balmy blue ink, so instead I'm using Versamark. So you've seen me probably use this for heat embossing, but it's also fantastic for creating like a watermark effect on card. So it will give you, if you use an image stamp, an image that is the same blue or the same green, whatever, the same colour as your card, just slightly more intense. So it gives a very subtle effect. It's fantastic for background stamping where you don't want what you're stamping to become too dominant. So I'm just going to ink up that cloud stamp, and I've got the mountains here, but I am then going to kind of slide the mountains down a bit and sort of stamp in the gaps. I don't know if you can see, once you've stamped with Versamark, it takes a short time, but then the images start to kind of emerge. Put the mountains back and see if I've got clouds in the right places. More or less, I want a little bit more there, I think. There, happy with that. Sandy's saying Versamark is a great tip. Yeah, it's really good because with one ink pad, if you've got coloured card, you've effectively got an ink pad in that colour. It's not as intense as the coloured ink pad would be, but you can use it. So yeah, I think it's fantastic stuff. You always want to have Versamark in your stash, I think. Right, now we're going to build these up, and I need to make sure those mountains are actually going to show behind the trees. So there's a little bit of fiddling about here, but it's not really too tricky. So they need to be more or less, the tallest mountain needs to be more or less at the top of the card, I think. Yeah, that looks about right. So I'm going to stick the mountains on first. And I'm not going to press them down to start with, because then if I need to move them, I'm going to be able to. I can't see if they're perfect until I get those trees in place. So I'll put that there, but I haven't really pressed it down. So now I line this up with the bottom of my blue layer, because it's exactly the same width. And actually I am going to move those mountains up just a tiny bit, I think. There we are. There. Now I can press all that down. And that is going to sit on my card base. My card base is smaller than usual. I really worked from the size of the die cut pieces for this card. I'll put the measurements sheet out at the end. So it's not quite a standard size. I'm just going to snip, got a little bit of mountain poking out there. Let's get rid of that. And I've got a tiny bit of tree over the edge here. There we are. So I've just got a very, very narrow border around my stamped piece here. My card base is also soft succulent, the same as the front piece with the trees. That's my insert, which I will play with in a minute. So then I need a couple of sailing boats. So these are from the Sailing Home set. I'm going to use Smoky Slate ink to stamp them. And I don't need my stamping mat because these are red rubber stamps, so there's cushioning on the image already. I like that these are going in different directions, and also that one is smaller than the other, because you can either have it's just a smaller boat, or you can put it further into the background and give yourself a little bit of perspective, which is what I did on this one. So I've stamped on white card. What I would then do is I've die cut them out and colour them in, and I've actually done the die cutting here. And this one is fully coloured, this one I haven't quite finished. And I don't know if you can see on the, let me lift up here, on the images they've got some water under them, and then when you die cut that, the water is die cut as well, which often is exactly what you need. But for this I didn't want that water, so actually I'm just going to snip it off. There we are. I've done the other one. So if I lay that back over the stamped image exactly and hold it up to show you, there, hopefully you can see that I have snipped off just these little shadowy bits of water there. The other thing I found was that where I've stamped on white card, which I wanted to do to get the bright colours, if I stick it on like that, you've kind of got all this white card here. So what I decided to do instead was to colour in that white space to try and knock it into the background a little bit. So I would suggest, if you're going to try and do this, that you play around with some scraps of card and see how your colours blend. I found in the end that because the colour I'm trying to match is soft succulent card with balmy blue ink on the top, I thought by mixing blue and green I would probably get the best effect. I tried it with the matching inks, it was a bit vivid. So then I went to watercolour pencils. So I actually decided that if I mix 3 watercolour pencils, so balmy blue, we don't have a soft succulent one, but we've got garden green. But garden green is a bit greener than soft succulent. Soft succulent has a little bit of grey in it, as well as the kind of the blue tinge. So I've also added a grey pencil. So I've got 3 of our watercolour pencils. They're balmy blue, garden green and basic grey. And what I'm going to do is layer them up just to cover these areas of white card here. Then I'm going to blend them out using a blender pen, and that will just add some colour that is fairly approximately the same as the background of the card. It's not perfect, but for me it was better than the white card. So I've just put balmy blue over those white areas. Now I'm going to add some garden green. And again, I'm just kind of scribbling. I'm not using the really pointy bit, point down on these. I'm just trying to use kind of a broad section of the pencil so I don't get any sharp or defined pencil marks or lines. I'm going to bring in the basic grey. And I've coloured in the actual yacht. I've coloured the sails with a crumb cake stamping blend, light crumb cake, and I've coloured the hull of the boat with light and dark balmy blue stamping blends. Alright, so that's that. Now I'll bring in my blender pen. If you don't know these, they have a clear fluid inside. I've no idea what it is, but you can use it to blend ink or blend watercolour pencil. And you have the control you would have with a felt pen, but you can use other media to actually work with. There we are. And then to clean the tip, I just scribble on my paper until there's no colour coming off. The tips do stain. I don't know if that's showing or not, but it's only staining, it won't come off. So now I don't have that harsh white in the background of my die cut, although I have, I think, missed a little bit down the edge of the sail there. Just going to quickly do that before I stick it on. There we are. So now I have my two yachts. I just need to glue those down. I decided to leave it as a blank card and not put a sentiment on. But I could have put a little banner or a label or a flag shape. So I'm going to put this one towards the back, making sure the mast is vertical. And then put this larger one towards the foreground. Again, making sure the mast is vertical. There we are. And then finally, I've taken my chalk marker just to try to give a little subtle feel for there being some waves. Depending on how much ink you've got on your card and how hard you press, this can be more or less subtle. It's less subtle on here, I think, than it was on here. So it just adds a little bit of movement into the water around where those boats are. For the insert, I can do whatever I fancy on that. I think I'm going to stamp the pine trees because that is my favourite stamp from all of these. So I'll just ink up a section of that and just stamp it on the edge. And I forgot my mat, but because I wasn't doing the whole stamp, I've got away with it. And I used the same stamp on the envelope as well. There we go. There's my insert done. And here is slightly crumpled, sorry about that, a sheet of measurements. I'm just going to drink some water while you look at that. I'll also clean off my stamps. Let me know if there's anything you want to ask. So I said with this card that the measurements I had gone with the size of the stamps and dies, which is why they are slightly strange. So my card base is 3 7/8 by 10 7/8 and scored at 5 7/16, which I would never normally do. The green layer is 3.5 by 5 5/16, and the blue layer is 3 3/4 by 5 5/16. Okay, so let me clear everything out of the way. I've no idea what the time is. Can anybody give me a time check, please? I haven't been wearing my watch where it's just been so hot recently, and I probably could have put it on today, but I haven't, so I have absolutely no idea what the time is. I'm hoping I've got time to do one more card with you. .306, thank you so much, Sandy. All right, I'm going to go for it, I think. Marjorie's saying 3:05, excellent. It's obviously later in Lincolnshire than it is here. No, not really. Thank you very much, ladies. That's super helpful. So if you have to go, then obviously you can go and you can catch up later, but hopefully you'll be able to stay with me for one final card. So summer says flowers and butterflies and bees and things to me, so I decided to create a summery card with some butterflies in it. I'll put the measurements sheet down there for you. So if you want to use what you've got to create something similar to what I made, then hopefully that will help you. So this is much more of a standard size card base. I've used die cuts here from Stitched So Sweetly, and I've put on here the approximate sizes just to give you some sense of proportion, but obviously you can use whatever you like. Thank you, Belinda, I'm glad you like it. And in fact, this pink one, as you'll see in a minute, is only half a die cut, so that's particularly economical. The paper is from Pansy Petals. And I've used a piece here, and then I've also die cut the butterflies from the paper. Let me lift that up just so you can see the pattern on the butterflies. Okay. The stamp set I've used for this is the Colour and Contour, and the words are from Art Gallery. And then for this flower, sorry, the flower and butterflies come to that, I've used the Loose Flower Flourishes. I'm going to use something else on the card I'll make you just to make something slightly different, but let me show you these because they are just gorgeous. If you haven't got them, why not? So let me put a few, I'm looking for a little bit of white. Here we go, some white card. Let's put that down. I've got everything so inky you won't necessarily see them. So there's lots of them in a pot. Does it tell me how many? 60 of these in a pot in 3 colours: Fresh Freesia, Polished Pink and Pale Papaya, which are 3 of our new in colours. Not quite so new anymore, but I know everybody has been loving those colours. And the flowers come in 2 different sizes, and they're quite dimensional. Hang on, let me pick a darker one. I've no idea if that will show up or not. Maybe if I put it against something completely white. Yeah. So, you know, they're not thin like a sequin. They are, I don't know what that is that a 1/16 of an inch? Probably near enough a 1/16 of an inch thick. They're made of some sort of resin, I'm guessing, but they are super pretty. They just look lovely scattered on things, and they make gorgeous flower centres as well as actual, you know, used as actual flowers. They hold in place either with a glue dot or with a little dab of multi-purpose glue. If I'm using the big ones, I tend to use a glue dot, and I use multi-purpose glue for the tiny ones. They are absolutely gorgeous. So if you haven't got those, you definitely need to add them to your next list. They are called Loose Flower Flourishes. And in the catalogue, they're on the embellishments page. Right, so let me bring out the bits and pieces here. So I've got a Fresh Freesia card base with a white insert. I've got my piece of patterned paper. I've got my white die cut, and then as you can see I've got half of a pink die cut. So it's from the same die set, Stitched So Sweetly, and I use the other half on here. And then I've got 2 butterflies that I have already die cut from that Pansy Petals paper. Pansy Petals paper is also in the paper sale at the moment, so if you haven't got any and would like some, now is your chance. And this little label, I'm using this label a lot. This is from the Hydrangea dies. and it's stitched as well, which is really nice. Sandy's saying that the little flower flourishes are very 3D. They are indeed, Sandy. They're fantastic. Now the opposite side of my paper is this beautiful gingham in fresh freesia, which I do find quite hard to stick down, but I'm going to go with the flowers this time. Okay, and this half piece I'm just going to butt up against that double-sided, that designer series paper and stick it down. Like that. And then I'm going to stamp on my layer here. So I need my foam mat again. I'm going to pop that under my grid paper because I'll probably be stamping off the edge. And then the colour and contour stamps are lovely. They've got quite an artistic kind of sketchy look to them. So I'm going to use this outline stamp and the infill and this lovely kind of scribbled leaf as well. And I need my smoky slate ink pad, which I think I've just put in a bucket on the floor. Let's find that. There we go. I was just using that with the previous card. So Belinda's saying the loose flower flourishes also work in flower shaker cards, and you can get away with using just a few. Great tip, Belinda. Thank you. Right, just going to write that on my list of cards to try. That sounds wonderful. So I'm going to stamp the outline. And that was smoky slate. I'm going to use polished pink to colour it in. Now the colouring in stamp definitely is a very approximate kind of stamp. Don't try to be completely exact with this because you won't be able to and you'll just get frustrated. So there we go. It absolutely does not fit exactly, and that's fine. And then I'm going to use Pear Pizzazz for these leaves. There we go. I think that's probably enough. I think I did 2 leaves on the front, 1 at the bottom, but I'm just going to do 1 on this. So that can now go on here. I could have put this on dimensionals, but I actually decided to put it flat, and I've put my label up on dimensionals. And you could use the same basic sketch for pretty much anything, any colours, any designs of paper and stamps. It's quite a useful one, I think. So I've got my die cut butterflies here. So I'm just going to put my thumbnail along one side of where the body is and then the other side and bend the wings up. So I'll only stick down the body part, and that will give it a little bit of dimension. Stick one up there and one down at the bottom. And I used the Brilliant Wings dies for these butterflies, which are fabulous actually. There's loads and loads and loads of dies in the set. There are 6 different lacy winged butterflies like this, 2 solid butterflies, much smaller, various pieces you can use for texture, and then also outline solid butterfly stamps. And here's another one that cuts like a brick wall effect. So that, along with the coordinating stamps, are absolutely lovely. If you like butterflies, it's a fantastic set. Right, so I've now got my label to stamp. So So I'm going to do thank you again because I always need thank you cards. I send lots of them out to customers. So this thank you is from Art Gallery, which has got a lot of really useful words in it in this really nice clear font, very easy to read. So again, I'll pull this down towards me just so that I can hopefully stamp straight. So I'm sorry if you can't see it well. There you go. So if I didn't say, that was polished pink again. So I'll pop that on with some dimensionals. Pop that there, and then instead of the loose flowers I thought I would use the In Colour Jewels for a change, which I absolutely adore. They are so sparkly, absolutely wonderful. So let's have a look, which colours shall I use? So I've got my butterflies to do and I've got my flower centre, so yeah, maybe a fresh freesia for those in the centre, and I'm thinking maybe pale papaya for the flower. Right, let me find something to pick them up with. Take your pick. There we go. So if you haven't got these already, they are sticky on the back and they're really sparkly. I'm hoping the camera will pick that up. They're faceted and they're iridescent, so the pack has got some in all of the in colours, but each one is not just one colour. They're kind of multicoloured from the iridescence. They're really beautiful. So these are fresh freesia underneath, but they've got kind of shades of blue, turquoise and green on them as well. So that's that. And then for my flower centre, I'm going to use the pale papaya ones, which have got kind of pinks and oranges in them too. I think I need probably 3 of them in the centre there. 3 of the big ones. The big ones are great because they're not too big, and the small ones are teeny tiny. So these are the small ones. If I put those next to them, you can kind of see they are really little, which is perfect very often. So there we are. That's the front of the card. I'm just going to stamp the flower on the inside. I think I'll probably do just as I did on the front. So I'll stamp the outline in Smoky Slate. I've still got my foam mat underneath. I'll colour it in Polished Pink. Thank you, Sandy. I'm glad you like it. Not worrying that this is not colouring it in exactly. It's supposed to be approximate. And then I'll just stamp a leaf or 2 in Pear Pizzazz. And put a little bit of leaf down there as well, I think. There we go. So that's ready to go inside. we go, that's my finished card. I'll bring back the other one so you can see the one with just the slightly different embellishments on it. There we go. I'm glad you like them, Marjorie. Thank you. You are most welcome. Let me put all 3 cards out. If you've been making cards inspired by summer, do please share a picture. You can pop it in the comments here, or you can just email it to me or send it via Messenger. And I love to share your cards with people in my Paper Crafters group. It's so nice for everyone to be able to see what everybody else has made. It's always very inspirational. Move that across a bit. Hopefully those 3 are all in. All right, I'm going to cover you over and just move the camera back up so I can say goodbye to you properly. So bear with me while I do that. Just make a few adjustments to the settings while I'm at it. Where's my microphone? There it is. Okay, right, just about there. There we go. Hopefully you can see and hear me okay again. There we go. Thank you, Belinda. I'm glad you enjoyed them. It was lovely to have you with me. All right, so I will be back same time next week, which will be the 30th of July. Can you believe we'll be almost into August? I'm going to be looking at the Expressions in Ink suite. So that is one to look out for next week. If you haven't seen that in the catalogue, take a look. The papers and stamps are beautiful, and it's unbelievable the way the stamps look so much like the image on the paper. The paper has been out of stock, but it's going to be back in stock pretty soon. So I'm going to carry on regardless. If you've enjoyed today, please like and share it, or give it a heart and share it. That really helps me get seen by people that might not otherwise find me, and who might enjoy the videos. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope you don't get too hot, too wet, or thundered on, but have a good one whatever you're doing, and I will look forward very much to seeing you next week. Take care and bye-bye. Oops, covered you over and it fell off. Let's get another post-it. Okay, bye-bye.